Tender Wings of Desire, Chapter 8. In the harsh light of morning, Madeline expected to feel mortified, but instead she felt rather pleasant. Her lips were chapped, but it was merely a delightful reminder of his kisses the night before. She half expected Harland to be gone, leaving Madeline behind as the product of some terrible rake. As she opened her eyes and realized that she was alone in her bed, it seemed as though her expectations were coming true. It was a strange feeling, to be sure, mostly because if he did love her and leave her, she probably would just go on living. She had expected, in a way, to be spoiled, but she did not feel that way at all. She simply felt like a woman who had lived through an experience, an enjoyable one. She was a woman who had embraced an attraction to a beautiful man, and now was free to go on with her life. Of course, despite looking on the bright side, she still rolled on her side, closing her eyes and breathing in his scent from the pillow. He smelled like the ocean. The only regret she had in this moment was the fact that she would not have had the chance to get to know him further. She felt as though he would have liked that, all things considered. "Did I wake you?" a soft voice asked from across the room, as it dragged her out of her self-empowering reverie. Harland sat in a chair across the room, watching her with eyes that she could not read at that moment. Was he sad? Happy? She remembered her father making jokes about the mysterious emotions of women, but men simply did not know that they too carried mysteries. "I thought you'd be long gone by now," she told him, feeling vaguely silly for saying something such as that. His lips ticked up in a smile as he stood and made his way to her side, tilting her head up and kissing her again. "I do not think I want to be going anywhere." She blushed, pulling the blanket up to cover herself, although he had already seen her in her nightgown. He smiled at her and stroked her cheeks, and Madeline felt those burning, icy butterflies begin to move into her stomach once again. "You are very kind," she said, once again cursing herself for her choice of words. He grinned. "There's no kindness about it. I just want to be seeing more of you every day for the foreseeable future." Madeline blushed brightly, but turned to meet his gaze. As much as she believed that she was some liberated woman who could take a lover and then leave him without caring, she was happy to hear that this one was going to stay. Of course, since daylight had broken, Madeline wasn't sure that she would be able to get him past Kiva, or whether that would even be necessary. She did not want her new roommate to believe she was a woman of loose morals, although Madeline supposed she technically was now. So when it was time for Harland to leave, she peeked outside and saw nothing. "Come on," she whispered, reaching for his hand. He took it, and she led him out of her bedroom and into the sitting room that she shared with Kiva. The rooms were silent, so silent that she could hear the beating of her own nervous heart, and she practically pulled Harland through the rooms and out the door. As quietly as they could, they descended the stairs and arrived once more in front of the tavern, where she had first seen him waiting for her. In broad daylight, she pulled him close and kissed him as though he were going out to sea again. He wrapped his arms around her and held her close, kissing her deeply. When they parted, he laid a final kiss on her forehead. "I am going to see you again," he swore. "You know where to find me," she replied. "Good." He gave her one last kiss, a quick one this time, and turned to stroll down the docks, whistling a jaunty tune and looking as though the entire world had been laid at his feet. Madeline watched him as he went, feeling like every love song she had ever listened to was real to her now. They were all singing for her. Her heart pounded in a lovely rhythm, and she wished that she could write and tell Victoria that she finally understood her younger sister's preoccupation with love. Love was splendid. Love was magical. Oh, if only Victoria could have the luxury of finding it for herself. It did not need to be some high-ranking member of the gentry. Love wasn't supposed to trap a woman into a life of duly planning parties and wearing beautiful dresses all the time. Love could be anything. It broke her heart a little to realize that she had to run away from her home and everything she had known to truly understand that her family's love came with so much obligation that she would never have figured this out on her own. She allowed herself the small relief of knowing that, no matter what she was doing now, she was on the path to finding out who she was. She never knew that she could possibly stumble into a life like this. It cheered her. Once he had disappeared from her line of vision, she turned to walk back up the stairs. It was early enough that she could probably sleep a little longer, and the idea of stretching out in the bed that was hers, earned after a long day's work, made it feel better than any feather mattress she had ever laid in. Entering the rooms, she was a little surprised to see Kiva standing in the doorway of her own room. The look on her face showed she was a little less than impressed with Madeline's actions, and for a moment, she felt the same kind of embarrassment she had felt when her mother used to catch her doing something wrong. However, that quickly vanished under the weight of her own stubborn conviction. Madeline held her head high, knowing exactly what she looked like. Clad in a nightgown, her hair all disheveled, she looked freshly kissed, and Kiva was not so innocent in this world to believe anything else. Kiva crossed her arms over her chest, her dark eyes burning like coals in the middle of her pale face. There was horror there, Madeline noticed, but as far as she could tell, there wasn't any disappointment. She did not know if she could handle the disappointment of her new friend. "I should have known," Kiva said. "A young woman, a young innocent, comes to this place and immediately takes up with the first rake she sees." "That is not what happened," Madeline said calmly. In fact, she was completely surprised by her own calmness. "I made my own choice. I respect my own choice. It is okay, Kiva. I took a lever. I wasn't taken." Kiva played nervously with the end of her braid as Madeline went over to the tiny wood stove to put the kettle on for tea. The two women sat in uneasy silence as they waited for the water to boil. But once cups of tea were in their hands, Kiva took a deep breath. "When I first arrived here, there was a man. His name was Freddie, or at least that was the name he gave me." Kiva's cheeks reddened as she remembered this man, and Madeline leaned closer to listen to her tale of inevitable woe. Kiva had been 17 when she came over to England, thinking that it would be a land of opportunity. In her small town in Ireland, Kiva was destined to become a milkmaid or perhaps a farmer's wife, but she would not have seen anything of the world. "So I left," she explained, "and I ended up in London working in a shop, and that was where I met Freddie." Freddie had been in the British Merchant Navy, and the moment he laid eyes on Kiva, who had been walking to the market one day, he jumped off of a boat that was preparing to shove off, ran to her side, and asked for her name. From there, it seemed like a dream. Freddie had big plans. He was going to earn a good wage from the Merchant Navy, and then he would come back to marry her. "I am not going to pretend that I am not a simple woman," Kiva said to Madeline, "and that you do not come from somewhere else. Somewhere you do not want to talk about, but the rules are different and also the same. We may not have gone according to much. We may not have had vast declarations, but a plan such as that was almost as formal." Due to his position, Freddie was often gone for long stretches at a time, and Kiva was faithful to him every time he left. "Freddie loved making promises," she said. "He loved to be in love and to love in return, and I honestly should not have been surprised to hear that he was in love with a girl in every single port he docked. By the time I found out, well, it was too late." Her cheeks turned red and she looked away from Madeline out of fear that her emotions would become too obvious. Madeline did not need to guess what kind of shame had been brought upon her. Madeline knew it would be rude to ask. "I'm not warning you about this because I think that Harland is a bad man. I think that men like him, those with the sea in their blood, they are different from other men. I just do not want you to feel the same heartache that I did." There was a moment then when it seemed as though Kiva was waiting for Madeline to finally truly open up about her past, and yet Madeline stayed silent. It was not that she wanted to withhold this information from one of her only friends, especially now that Harland knew everything, but as she opened her mouth to speak, she simply could not bring herself to tell the tale. Admitting it to Harlan had been like letting it go, and she did not want to bring it back up again. So she said the only thing she could say, "I'll be careful." It wasn't as though Kiva was disappointed, far from it, but she seemed to take comfort in Madeline's conviction, even though they both knew that the words were only words, and that the most important thing she could do was avoid being ruined by the attentions of a man. Neither of them knew for sure, but for now Madeline was more than willing to take the chance. "Just do not tell Liam," Kiva said, forcing lightheartedness back into her voice. "I believe he's taken a shine to you."